excited. We have a major announcement to make on the show, and I don't think I've ever had an announcement made on this show that is as big as this one. So I feel very honored that we can make this announcement today. Joining me to bring that announcement to you, the people of Tennessee, is State Representative Monty Fritts. Monty, welcome to the show. How are you, man?
Yes, sir.
You've been a state representative in Tennessee now for how long?
3 years.
And what do you think?
I've enjoyed it. Politics is something I never really wanted to get into. Don't really want to be in it now, but it's a necessary thing. It's. I would draw a crazy analogy, if you wouldn't mind. In 2003, I just feel like the Lord laid on my heart to go and re-enlist. You know, we were going to send Tennesseans to Iraq with the 278th, and I'd been a Cav Scout when I was young, and so I was fat and out of shape. But I asked myself a question as I come down that. I prayed about it, and Denise and I talked about it before I re-enlisted. I was 40 that year. If not me, who? And if not now, when? And I pray hit that same type, if not me, who? If not now, when? Question when I ran for state rep, because I just wasn't happy what was happening in Nashville with all the mess with COVID and infringements upon our liberty. And so I jumped into it much out of frustration. What I'm going to talk to you about this morning is after much prayer. Some frustration, but much prayer.
Feels like you're almost at the same kind of crossroad.
I am. Tennessee's in trouble.
So without further ado, I think we should lay down what the major announcement is.
Yes, sir. Be happy to. I'll humbly submit, but boldly proclaim I'm going to run to be governor of the state of Tennessee.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, me too. I started an application process now with 7 million people to ask them to hire me and lay out my resume and what I have done, not just in civilian work and military work but what I've done in the legislature. Not running against anybody. I think public service, even if I don't like what you're doing, if you're voting wrong, if you're some of these people that scored a 60 on the John Birch Society this year, we have another problem. But I'm running against what I think is an embedded establishment politic in Nashville that, quite honestly, brother, thinks that people like me shouldn't even apply for jobs like this. I'm not connected enough in Hollywood or D.C. or Nashville. And I've heard that, and I continue to hear it. I think that's not what our founders intended.
I'm with you. And it does seem like there is a political elite and an establishment in Tennessee.
Yes, sir.
That being said, that feels like an uphill battle.
It is. It's Mount Everest. I certainly cannot do this oven by myself, but I think we can. I think, not to sound too preachy, but I think God's got us at one of those intersections of time again. I think there's a great thirst for liberty in Tennessee, and I think there's a great distaste for a government that's growing out of control, a budget that is growing out of control 59% in the last 6 years. That's not small government. That's not responsible. So I'm going to, 2 Kings 13 talks about striking the ground with your arrows. I will put my foot many times in each county in the state of Tennessee, and I will empty my quiver into the ground for liberty and less government in Tennessee. Because I think for folks like me that are natives in Tennessee, we desire for that. Some of us that grew up admiring that volunteer spirit, men like John Sevier, men like Crockett, men like Houston, York. I think there's a strong desire. And people that have moved here looking for liberty, they found themselves, I hear it so often, a disillusionment with, I thought we were really conservative. And when we talk about the budget, when we talk about gun rights, what an egregious last 2 weeks. I mean,
honestly.
Oh, my goodness. Yes, yeah. I spend a whole hour talking about that. But they've come here and they're like, this is not what I expected. I have a friend from New York. I'll leave his name out of it. But he moved in and he said, Monty, he said, it seems like that sometimes we Republicans in Tennessee are acting more like the Democrats in New York. Well, that's a shameful thing to hear. And I think we have lots of good men and women that come into office, come into political office to serve, and I think they get caught up in the seniority apparatus, it's all about money and preserving the status quo apparatus, the Stepford wife mentality of just do whatever comes from the hill. I think our founders designed this whole thing so that there would be a little tension, even if we're the same party. You know, Washington warned us in his farewell address about political parties. And I think even within the same party, there needs to be a little tension. I think that sometimes you have good men and good women that may vote a little differently, and they're penalized for it, or they're voted off the island, if you will. That's not a trend toward liberty. And, the money, oh my goodness, the money that comes in, the people that slither up and down the halls in the Cordell Hall building, some work for the governor, many work for the governor now, and they argue against your rights while they're on salary, while they're a state employee, a state of Tennessee employee, and they're arguing against your rights. They're trying to influence legislation as it moves, and constitutionally, the governor gets one shot at that bill. If the House and the Senate pass it, it goes to his desk, passes it, it goes to his desk, and he gets to sign it into law, let it lay for 10 days, not counting Sundays, or veto it. And that's not what's happening right now. We have the executive department is running 60 and 70 bills that they write and they hand to a legislator to carry them. That's not what our founders intended. Our Constitution says that from time to time the governor's supposed to make suggestions, talk about things we need to do. I'm supportive of that. But it's not looked upon favorably if you go against something on the that the governor's asking for. And I'll stop with this and go back to any questions you have, because I'll ramble. I'm passionate about this. I feel like God's called me to do this, just as he called me to be a cavalry scout in Iraq, just as he called me in much frustration to run for this office, just as I think I was Balaam's donkey that he called to take prayer to 95 counties in Tennessee and ask for his blessing as we repented. I feel called. Don't know what the outcome of that will be, but I'll tell you, I think I'll win, because I think that there is a thirst for liberty and a distaste for big government. And I think Tennesseans from Memphis to Mountain City that I've met are sick of paying taxes to have corporate welfare come out of this hill.
Yep.
We need to stop that.
Let's start with Memphis. There's been a lot of talk about the governor may or may not send the National Guard into Memphis. He's open to it. I always fall back on it seems like Bill Lee does things a day late and a dollar short, and he kind of waits to see which way is the wind blowing before he does it. How do you feel about sending the National Guard into Memphis?
So let me first say this. These people I'm going to be critical of, I love them. But I think that we are called in public service, just as we're their friends, to be straightforward, to be honest. So I want to say, and I love you to all the people we're going to talk about first that may hear this, and I may never mention their name, but they're offended by what I'm about to say.
Okay.
We need to be able to communicate straightforward. I think Article 3, Section 5 of the Tennessee Constitution is pretty clear, that in cases of rebellion and invasion, that the governor can send in the militia. And I think that the General Assembly shall declare by law. That's the way it's written. We did that a couple of years ago, if you remember, to help Texas repel an invasion. We didn't end up sending anybody under that. We sent folks under Title 10, which was much different, because Title 10 means they were federalized. And if you'll recall, a couple of years ago when Mr. Biden was in office, they were tearing down the fences that the state of Texas was putting up to repel that invasion. And so as a result of that, as a result of the federal government's failure and an open border, we have criminal violent gangs today. I think our first order of business, Memphis, Nashville, wherever it happens to be, I think there's a need for an Article 3, Section 5 authorization to help address the violence that the criminal cartels are bringing in. Much of the violence, much of what I think we're having in Memphis is resultant from drug cartels. And I think that is a rebellion. Now, in some cases, those are U.S. citizens, and it's still a rebellious thing. So I think we first have to go to that Constitution. And I think, I was a National Guardsman. I understand the role of the citizen soldier, domestically and foreign. So I think there's a need to do something. I will even go further. I think that we've hired lots of state troopers. And I think that there's a role for our state trooper force in helping. The sheriff is the high authority in these counties, and I think you got to work with them. But, our founders were big on liberty, right? Liberty's the word, freedom, liberty. The first role of government, according to the Declaration of Independence. We talk about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and it says that securing that liberty is the first order of business. That's what our Declaration says. And then in the preamble to the Constitution, we talk about securing the blessings of liberty on ourselves or to ourselves and posterity. Our founders believed in that. Well, it's hard to say that poor person in Memphis who's afraid to walk down the street, who's afraid to drive down to their church meeting or to the restaurant, is living in liberty. And first order of business, if it is liberty and to secure those rights, that I think we got to do something.
I agree. We're in studio with Monty Fritts, state representative. He's just announced that he is running for governor in the great state of Tennessee. You mentioned liberty, and it sparked my brain. Just a couple days ago, we had the Surgeon General of Florida say that there's nothing that a free man. What they're doing with the vaccine mandates with these kids, it's reminiscent of slavery. The government telling you what you can and can't put in your body. On the same topic of liberty, what does health in Tennessee look like under a Monty Fritts leadership?
So I'll tell you some of the things it doesn't look like first. It doesn't look like a health department that spends lots of your money to advocate for you to take the jab, which we did. It doesn't look like that. I applaud the Surgeon General for Florida. That's a bold man.
Yep.
And he spoke words that history's going to look back on favorably. And we're going to have commissioners of health and surgeon generals and all look back on that and say, I wish I had aligned with him because he's speaking a foundational truth of liberty. And liberty is, by definition, I think, unfortunately, we've reached a point where many people don't understand this. Liberty is simply the God-given ability to decide between two options and the opportunity to make the right choice, but you bear the consequences either way. And so many of the things we're doing today with the budget and with these infringements, and it's like death by 1,000 paper cuts infringements. We're stripping liberty away from Tennesseans. And that health department in Tennessee certainly doesn't issue contraception at cost to you, to any Tennessean. I think if you look at the website right now, you'll see that the Department's health in Tennessee issue contraception to anybody who come in, even minors, and you're paying for it. And even emergency contraceptive pills, which do two things. Not a doctor, but I can read. That they prevent ovulation or prevent implantation. And I think when you pull on that string, that means we're killing babies, in my worldview, that when conception occurs, there's life.
Yep.
And we pay for that. I tried to edit that out of the budget. I did 5 budget amendments to take money out of the budget this year. And one of them was for $10,000, just to send a shot across the bow that there are lots of Tennesseans that on a moral foundation and on a constitutional foundation, that's not a role of government. Providing contraception for everybody is not a role of government. We need to get out of that.
Yeah. And,
that's in some circles, that's not popular. I don't care. It's right. And I will tell you, I think I have lots of friends that are Democrats that are, the other side of that issue and many others. But what I've found is this. They've had it up to their nose holes of politicians who tell them what they think they want to hear, or they speak in some high euphemism that doesn't define anything, and they have no commitment to hold them accountable to. And so I got away from your question there. I think I applaud the Surgeon General in Florida. I think those were bold words. And when you compare them to what a sitting U.S. Senator said, Tim Kaine, that he compared our founders' words to that of Iran.
Yep.
somebody should be impeaching him right now if that's an option. I'm not sure that's an option.
He literally said that our rights don't come from the Creator yesterday.
He did. And is he an attorney? Is that his first problem?
It was,
or is it just that he's a communist? I don't know.
It was unbelievable. These were the comments from Tim Kaine yesterday, just so, in case you haven't heard them.
Notion that rights don't come from laws and don't come from the government, but come from the Creator. That's what the Iranian government believes. It's a theocratic regime that bases its rule on Shia law and targets Sunnis, Baha'is, Jews, Christians, and other religious minorities. And they do it because they believe that they understand what natural rights are from their Creator.
That's embarrassing. And I'm going to ruffle some feathers here, Chris, but it's the truth. We just won a big victory in this Hughes v. Lee thing, liberty victory in Tennessee.
Amen.
And unfortunately, the legislator didn't provide that. For 154 years, we've allowed Jim Crow-type language to exist on the books that someone could pick and choose and say, okay, Chris, because you're armed, you're a criminal and you have to prove that you're not. That's wrong.
Yep.
That is against the premise of
guilty until proven innocent.
That's exactly right, brother. And so now we're going to appeal. We've issued a notice of appeal. So we're going to use your money to argue against your rights. I got to tell you, the people that are doing this think more like Tim Kaine than they do Monty Fritts. The people that would say, well, we just don't, I've heard this from the governor's people. We just philosophically disagree with you. Those people don't get to be philosophical. They get to be constitutional, period.
Amen.
And it's my responsibility as a watchman on the wall, somebody elected in House District 32 and the next governor of the state of Tennessee, I have got to hold them accountable for that, and I will.
I think you bring a lot to the table, Monty, and I think that you could even lure in some independents and some Democrats with some of your stances on health, geoengineering, and the like, and I think that you've been a bold and brave voice. We've had John Rose on, and he was welcome to take questions from our audience.
Yes, sir.
Because I think at the end of the day, it's really important that the voters get to speak to you.
Absolutely.
We've issued the same invitation to Marsha Blackburn. We have not yet heard back, but you're willing to take questions from this audience.
Absolutely. I'd love to. As a matter of fact, I'll be setting up a visit. I know how to travel the entire state, and we'll have Meet Monty meetings in every county in Tennessee. You want to come ask me anything. If I can't answer it, I'll tell you I can't. And I hope if you're okay, whomever that is, I don't mind arguing, because if I think it's constitutional, I'm going to stick with that. But it's important. I think people expect that. I think that we have – I'll chase this for just a minute. One of the things I think we have to do, it's like number 2 or number 3 on my list, is that we have to recalibrate government in Nashville, not the state employee. I know I used to be a state employee back when I was a young guy. They feel abandoned by what's happening in Nashville right now. Many of our average state employees do. But the leadership in Nashville has forgotten 2 things: that they are bound by the Constitution just like I am, and number 2, that they work for you.
Amen.
And they've forgotten that. The responses I get back from senior leadership sometimes, not always, there's some good men and women that serve in that, but the responses are like dismissive, that, well, this person doesn't really matter. And so one of the ways we're going to fix that, I'm going to recalibrate it, is some of those people that have been arguing against your rights, some of the people that have been slithering down the halls of Cordell Hull building and sitting in committees and arguing against your gun rights and your property rights, they're going to be reassigned pretty quickly and given an opportunity to work on the governor's helpline.
Let's go.
Because I think that you shouldn't have to call your state rep or your state senator to complain about a TDOT where the potholes are so bad that you can't drive. I think you ought to be able to call the one responsible for that, and that's the governor. And I think that you ought to be able to press 1 for TDOT or press 2 for DCS. I think there ought to be a line, an email that they actually respond to, and take away the burden. And I think the Hill is loving that people have a complaint about any of the departments and they call the state rep. I have no authority to force them to do anything. You got to go to where the buck stops, and we will set that up in Tennessee, and that will recalibrate how these folks think, and it's needed.
Monty Fritts, state representative, he has just announced. Well, I'll let you announce it again, Monty.
I'm going to apply to 7 million people in Tennessee to serve them for 4 years as their governor. I'm going to run for governor in Tennessee.
So we got a 3-man race now.
Yes.
John Rose, Marsha Blackburn, and Monty Fritts.
Yes.
I'm really excited. So we do this thing on the show called Come At Me, Bruh, where you guys get to ask the officials who want your vote any question you want, and nothing's off the table. Like, nothing. Bring the crazy. We're happy to have it. The one thing we ask is that there's no glazing and no political, junk. I don't want your team calling in and throwing you softballs. That's pretty much the only thing I ask. If the other political teams want to come in and throw you curveballs, I'm fine with that.
Me too.
Because I think that's healthy.
Me too.
John Rose has participated in Come At Me, Brah. Marsha Blackburn hasn't been invited for a session of Come At Me, Brah. I have not heard back. We're still waiting, and we're still working on that. Monty Fritts is here, and he's welcome to take your questions. So without further ado, this is Come At Me, Brah. 615-737-9986 if you got a question for Monty Fritts. Let's go to Jeff in Hendersonville. You're on the line with Monty. What's up, Jeff?
Hey, how you doing, brah?
What's up?
Good morning, Jeff.
Hey, sir. How you doing? I'm originally from San Diego, and I picked up the show just jumping into work, and I didn't know your name. I couldn't get it, so I called in just to see who was speaking, because you're definitely resonating with me as somebody who is a political refugee from an absolutely state that is overrun with overreach and probably from the point of no return. So a lot of Californians, just see Tennesseans out there. Most of us are more conservative than you are, and that's why we moved our entire family, left friends, homes, businesses, and that's why we're here. So I'm definitely picking up what you're putting down. I got a good sense of where you stand on the health thing. We left because we felt the jab was going to be mandated for our kids.
Yep.
And also in California at age 12, that ends your any parental oversight you have over your children's medical treatment or information. Yeah, you can pay for their bill and you can schedule a flu shot, and that's it. You can't ask their doctor anything about birth control, gender reassignment, nothing. Age 12.
Can I offer you something there, Jeff? Can I step on you just a second and offer you something?
Please.
So these people, it's like that silly Tim Kaine up in Virginia, the senator that was talking about rights coming from law rather than from God. And so when these people start to make decisions, whether it's in California or Tennessee, and it'd be a hard thing to leave San Diego because it's a beautiful place. I like San Diego, California. But what they are doing is practicing a form of idolatry, because they are putting themselves in what our founders view, because they were creationists in their worldview, all flawed men like me, but they were creationists in their worldview. And they knew that our rights come from God, our blessings come from God. Liberty, 2 Corinthians is where the presence of the Lord is, there's liberty. It's of God. And so when they start telling you that at age 13, you can't decide for your children anymore.
No, 12.
Or 12, yeah.
You're a year late.
Yeah, but when they start that, they're practicing authority that, the Constitution doesn't give them, and Almighty God is not giving them, because God is the one that blesses us with those children. And so that's an atrocious thing. What we have to be careful with here in Tennessee, just to be honest with you, and part of the reason I felt called to run, and I've prayed on this for a long time, but just talk about the budget for a minute. We've gone from 37.5 to 59.5 billion budget requests in 6 years. And for every one of those, what I think are overtaxed dollars, because we've been spending them on corporate welfare, what that does is it relieves you of some of your liberty. Every time, Jeff, we take one of your dollars, your liberty is diminished just a little bit.
Oh, no question.
And then we grow this government, and whether it's numbers of state employees or numbers of contractors and non-government organizations that we fool with, and we take your liberty, and often it's going to come at you like this. Well, we're trying to make you safer. Right? Or we're going to give you choice. I'm going to really tick some folks off with this one. But we were already liberated in Tennessee. Most of us think, I don't need you to monetize my decisions. I don't need you to try to convince me to get my kids a shot that I don't want to, or vaccinate them with anything that I want to, because God gave that child to me. What I need you, government, is to get out of my way and secure my rights. I think that's what.
Well, let me just say this. I'm going to step on you then, sir. Like, we're still amazed at the low voter turnout and the apathy. I don't know. People are just certain. Listen, I'm just going to say the left is absolutely laser focused and organized and executing. Listen, get out and vote, and also open primaries. What's that all about? Like, I've seen, I'll tell you what, just local from where I'm from, people that are absolutely not conservative or Republican running as such, and then getting votes in the primary, open primaries, and then absolutely, getting in. And people here, I think, are a little more trusting than they should be on that. These people
Fair.
are absolutely focused on getting power.
Fair.
Jeff, I would offer you this too, and I'll stop.
And we appreciate the call, Jeff.
I do. I'll ask for your vote, and I'll ask if the message of liberty and less government resonates with you, go tell 10 of your friends and ask them to go tell 10 more, because we're going to run up against a political machine, not the people, but a political machine that doesn't want people like me. They say Monty shouldn't even apply for this kind of job. He doesn't know enough people. And so what it's going to require is you telling folks and them telling folks and getting them energized and getting their butts to the polls to vote, and I need that. I appreciate you calling, brother.
What do you think about open primaries?
I think that the Yankees wouldn't let the Dodgers pick their manager, and I think that's the best I've had. I'm plagiarizing somebody, but I think that's it. I don't think we should have open primary. I think we need to close them down. I think there's different ways to do that, because I do think there's a lot of people who have been Democrats, and they're not the crazy AOC Democrats that hate America. They're communists, they're Marxists, they're atheists. It's not them. They love the country. They grew up at a different time. They were John F. Kennedy.
Yeah. Well, this is how I turned my mother and father-in-law. I said, you understand, if JFK ran today with the same exact plan, he'd be a Republican, right?
Yeah. So I think we got to make sure that we leave an opportunity to pull those people into the Republican Party. But aside from even parties, brother, I think the big thing is vote like an American. Vote Tennessee values, and close the primaries. And I think nature will take its course. Because if we adhere to the platform, today's Democrat platform, there's no choice. You're going to be a Republican.
Matt, who's on the road, has a question for Monty Fritts, who's running for governor. Matt, real quick, what do you got?
Hey, Monty. So last year in judiciary, we had a 50-50 equal shared parenting bill fail, led by lawyers. When it does come back up in this legislative session, would you support 50-50 equal shared parenting so we can put fathers back in the lives of our children and stop the corrupt criminal family court system and the Title 4D money that comes in the state and goes into the pockets of the attorneys?
I'll give you a short answer, a yes. And boy, that's a mouthful. You've thought about this, so I take it you've got some passion behind it. What I think we do in some cases there now, brother, is we also decide that we're going to perpetuate the status quo rather than just do what is right. And God give those children to the mother and the father. And I think that's an important thing. I think there are deadbeat dads that ought to have their butts kicked for not helping take care of their children. But I also think that there are deadbeat moms that leverage that against good men and hold the child hostage between the parents. I will tell you where the real accountability is going to come in there. Someday those men and those women are going to stand before a righteous God, and they're going to have to give account for the fact that they harmed their children by using them as a weapon against the other. And so the answer is yes, but you get a little philosophy on that too.
Let's go to Legend in the Borough. You got a question for Monty Fritts, who's running for governor in Tennessee. What's up, Legend?
Hi. Will you send the National Guard to Memphis?
Thank you for that question, Legend.
Good question.
And where do you live again?
She was in the borough.
In the borough. Okay. Hey, it's good to talk to you. Thank you for asking. So I'm a former National Guardsman. The answer is yes, but we have to do that the right way. Article 3, Section 5 of the Tennessee Constitution. So many times nowadays we're getting outside what the bounds of the Constitution are. We've got to do it that way. So I think what's happening in Memphis and in Nashville and sometimes in Knoxville is a rebellion of crime. And I think when you read that Tennessee Constitution, go read it, please, if you haven't read that, Article 3, Section 5, and it says the General Assembly shall declare by law. I wrote a bill to do that a couple of years ago, and I would ask the General Assembly to move on that again. I think the governor ought to be asking for that. As a matter of fact, we called special sessions, the current governor, we called special sessions to take gun rights away from us. We called a special session, and we leveraged helping our friends in Upper Tennessee just to pass this voucher scam. Why shouldn't we call a special session to give Article 3, Section 5 authority to Governor Lee so that he can send some troops down to Memphis to help? And I'd start first with the illegals that are in the crime, because it is a constitutional apostasy, I think, that we have folks that are afraid to go out of their door because we're not doing the function of government. We're worried more about sometimes pandering to the celebrity than we are doing the right thing. And last thought on this. and this is going to tick some people off here in Nashville too, but we should stop sending our guardsmen. I deployed to Iraq, ma'am. I re-enlisted at age 40. The soldier goes, the volunteer, the John Sevier runs toward danger. That's just part of being a Tennessean, right? So it's not the soldier. And we have good men and women right now in combat zones, I think, around the world that are Tennesseans. But what we ought to do is start asking the question about what is this undeclared war that we're sending these troops off to so regularly and diminishing our ability to quell civil disturbances at home when we have rebellions or invasions. So the short answer is yes, we got to do it the right way.
Monty Fritts is running for governor in the state of Tennessee. Just announced this morning, breaking news. So we now have a 3-person race. A lot of people on the text line are asking your stance on marijuana. And I got a text here in particular that I think is going to hit different for you because of your service. It says, I'd like to know his stance on marijuana. It is an absolute blessing from God for my PTSD. 4 combat tours, Iraq, Afghanistan, and I will not take psychotropic meds. I have taken them, and they're horrible on me. I can't drink legal alcohol because it's a poison, number one, and makes me an angry drinker, thanks to the Army. Your stance on medical marijuana and recreational marijuana.
Can I have this person's name, first name?
I don't have the first name.
Well,
it's 8883.
8883, I appreciate you calling. Appreciate your 4 tours. I've only done 1 combat tour in Iraq, so I appreciate it. And we have to look at things God didn't design our eyes to see and do things God didn't design our hands to do. And so, brother, you hang in there and remember we're still in the fight. Don't give up. Don't give up, period. To the marijuana question, I'll give you a little background. I've seen so many people harmed and get into an addiction with marijuana. And so we have 2 big forces, I think, right now, both big money forces that are pushing for legalizing marijuana. Part of that is a lobby that wants us to be like Colorado. I don't want that. The other part is a lobby that's the pharmaceutical lobby who the last few years have proven they do not have our health in mind. And so I'm concerned about the dollars with either one of those avenues. But I do think that first the VA ought to be caring for you, and there ought to be an opportunity for you to be provided something that does help. I'll even go a step further. Those people that, that raise or grow on their own property, you're not going to drive when you're high, you're not out in public when you're high. I don't know that we ought to be messing with that any. But just don't mishear the answer I'm giving you that I want you to have help, and we have to be specific in how we do that. But what I do not want us to do is to enrich the pharmaceutical companies nor the lobbies that want a stoned environment. And I know that's not what you want, brother. I know that. Hear my heart. The money that comes into that stuff, it's like the alcohol lobby. They don't care how many lives they ruin. They don't care how many people die in car crashes and how many of us become angry drunks, as you mentioned, just because we drink. Just keep pumping the money.
70% of alcohol sales come from alcoholics.
Yes.
Yeah. This is a guy who doesn't drink. I am an alcoholic. I don't drink because of that. 70% of alcohol sales come from the alcoholics.
I'm gonna put a friend of mine on the spot a little bit here, and I love him. He knows I love him, and he's not an alcoholic, but he was impacted greatly by an alcohol-related crash that killed all of his family but one child, Saran Stacy, who lives here in Middle Tennessee. Now, if you ever get a chance to talk to him, he's a great man of God. He's a gracious man of God. We got a chance first to pray together down in Lynchburg and pray for Tennessee back in 2024, and he was praying for those folks because they were having some issues in Lynchburg, Tennessee, where their whole economy is driven by alcohol and good people working there. But the lobby that pushes it, it's, between the drunken politicians and the drunken lobbyists that push it and throw the money at it, it's sickening to me what I see in some of that. If you want, Jesus turned water into wine. I'm convinced that he turned dirty hand washing water into high quality, high alcohol content wine. I'm convinced that there's a use for it. And the Bible says there's a use for it. I think what I find profane is the just pushing it with no responsibility for what it's doing to people.
What would you say to the argument that alcohol is more of a gateway drug than marijuana?
I would probably agree with you, and it's much more accessible, and it's much more socially and societally acceptable that we start giving kids a drink when they're early. when early in their years, and they develop an addiction. Some have that tendency once they have that drink, they have a hard time letting it go. And I would agree with that. I think it's terrible. And I don't take money from these PACs anyway, so I don't care what they think. But shame on them for what they've pushed and promoted. We've found ourselves with liquor stores on every corner, and so for the person like 8883 that we were just talking to, that can find some relief from marijuana, whether it's administered by a doctor, however that comes. He sees that as a bit hypocritical when we have the streets flowing with whiskey and beer.
Mm-hmm. A lot of people do.
Yep.
If it was put to a vote and it passes, it gets through the state legislature, it gets to your desk to legalize it medicinally and recreationally, what do you do?
Not recreationally. I wouldn't recreationally. I would say that it depends on how that bill's written. And I think it's part of the problem we have right now in Nashville. Is whatever the governor wants, he gets and sends it through and rams it through. I think there needs to be a little tension between the General Assembly and the governor's office. And I think there needs to be a willingness to veto things to sharpen them up. I have that willingness. Depending on how it's written, I could get there for helping people. I can't get there for the recreational part of it. I just can't. And to be honest with you, I had a colleague who was greatly injured by an alcohol-related crash. And when he tried to do some things to slow down the consumption while driving, he was ridiculed. I think at the end, there was only a couple of us that stayed co-sponsors on his bill to try to control it.
So with the marijuana, it does sound to me, though, that you're not in favor of big government. You're not necessarily wanting to legalize it for recreational reasons, but you're down for decriminalization.
To some extent, and especially if I struggle with the doctors getting involved, because then you have insurance companies. I think that if we get to the liberty perspective on it, that it's not somebody getting wealthy, it's not the drug dealer, it's not the cartel. I could probably get there. But I think it becomes a complex decision about how we arrive at that and what the bill does allow.
Monty Fritts is running for governor in the state of Tennessee. Monty, how can we learn more about you, keep up with you, and help you with the campaign?
Go to Fritts, Fritts, the number 4, TN.com, FrittsForTN.com. You can check me out on Facebook with just my name, Monty Fritts, Monty Fritts. And I've got a little bit of a Twitter presence too, so or X, whatever it is.
Yeah, I still say Twitter. Monty Fritts, running for governor. Thank you for the time today, and good luck in the race.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.